On this episode of Carnage, the Trolvo is on the dyno. This is the Trolvo. It's a 1983 Volvo 240 that we bought as an unfinished project. Under the bonnet is a Toyota 1JZ. 2.5 litre, straight 6, twin turbo, makes about 206 kilowatts from the factory. But of course, when we got it, nothing was hooked up. Over the last 4 episodes, we have plumbed the car, wired it up, installed a Haltech ECU, managed to get it running and driving. Yes! Yes! Well, sort of. But we are not done yet. We've still got to tidy up the wiring, do the power steering lines, sort out the auto transmission before we can get this on the dyno, on the road, and more importantly, on the track. We have been waiting on a fuel tank from the USA. It's here now, so let's install it so we can stop running this thing off a jerry can in the boot. The new fuel tank isn't the only thing we ordered. We also ordered a brand new fuel sender because the last one was rusty as. So that will go in there with a shiny new fuel pump on it, and we'll have all the flow with nice clean fuel. Let's get a pump on this baby and get it installed. So this is the factory sender and pickup that came out of the car, and as you can see, we can't use that. It is pretty horrible. It does have this tiny little in-tank pump on it, and I was considering getting just another replacement pump to put in our new sender, but if you cast your mind back to the first episode of the Trolvo, there was this in the car. Brand new Dyno pump, good for about 800 horsepower at our pressure level. So I reckon let's install that into our sender. So that'll give us a good pump in the tank, plus a good pump halfway up the car. Plenty of flow, plenty of pressure. I reckon that is a plan. Because our pump is a lot larger than the factory pump, we're going to have to cut this pickup tube slightly. This is the return tube to make room for a bigger pump. So I've shortened up our fuel feed line so that there's enough room for the pump down here. Now I'm just going to push this one into place. The pump will go on there. It's about level with our return line, which is the way it's supposed to be. And then we'll just slide our little hose clamps into place. We'll wire it up. Almost there.
So while Scotty's figuring out his fuel pump situation, I'm going to do a few more basic things like putting the headlights and grille back in. Scotty's pre-warned me I'm probably going to have to clearance his headlights slightly for his cooler piping. So I'm going to figure out how much to chop out there. I'm going to use this dud headlight to mock it up and do a bit of cutting, so that way I can figure out where I need to actually cut this out to get it to sit in there nice. And then I'll cut the good headlight later on because I don't want to keep cutting and cutting and cutting and then go overboard. This is where it seals in with a rubber boot. So if I cut it too far or if I figure out that it's too hard to do on the new headlight, then we're kind of screwed. And this one's already here and it's not going to get used again, so we may as well cut this one up first. So it's roughly about right. I mean, it doesn't look good, but the headlight is in about as far as it's going to go. So I think I will use the flappy disc to grind this bit down gradually, unlike that where I just cut straight into it to get straight to the point. There's no rubber boot on there at the moment, but we'll fix that up later. We'll just get it all working for now. The grill is in, but with zip ties, much to Scotty's dismay, because we don't have the right mounting hardware for it right now. Next summer at the Wreckers, we'll have a look at some of the cars there and see if we can figure out how it goes on properly. But for now, at least, without crushing the light, it's starting to look like a car now.
Parkers, cool. Headlights, nice. So now the Kian's got the headlights and grille back in, I can do this pump and tank situation. Okay, so we'll hook up the pump up the top and we should be pretty much done at this end anyway. So here's the difference that second pump is going to make. Can hit the ignition. Right, so there's your pre-prime. So that's that Bosch 044 and it's making a hell of a racket. Now, if I connect the second pump, quietens right down. It's going to do the job. Oops. Alrighty then, we have our new fuel tank in, new fuel pump, everything's wired up, it all runs, which is great. I've looped the heater hose on the engine from inlet to outlet because I don't want to test the Volvo heater core at the moment. Who knows, with our luck, it would definitely leak. So I don't want to do that. I've got to tidy up some wiring and we have our Haltech WB-1 Wideband controller to install. So let's have a look at what's in the box and then we can install in the car and move on to some of that other stuff. So the big question that everyone is asking, why do I need a wideband controller? Why isn't it just built into the ECU? The reason is pretty simple. If you happen to melt your sensor across the exhaust or something like that, the possibility is that you could fry this. But you would rather fry this than your ECU, which is a lot more expensive. But a wideband controller is useful for a bunch of other things such as data logging, self-tuning, all that stuff is available to us, which it wasn't back in the 90s when this engine came out. Might as well take advantage. So now we're going to work out where we're going to mount our wideband module. So there's our wideband sensor, only has that much length and that has that much length. So we know that end has to go in the exhaust system about 1 meter back from the exhaust valve, so it doesn't give us much length on that. So I'd like to mount this on the glove box next to our HPI 6. Let's plug it in and see how much room we have to play with. So that's going to go down there-ish.
Might have to break out the vessel. It's a nice way of doing it. I'm going to call that good enough.
So let's check the length on this thing. So that's through the firewall, goes to there, which is plenty. Into there, click, goes through, and yep, that's got plenty. It almost touches the floor. It has been a couple of weeks since we've worked on the Trolvo. Unfortunately, we had to take a break for drag challenge, but that's all done now. So we are back in the workshop and there's plenty to do. We discovered that the alternator is kaput. It's dead, not charging. So we ordered this new bad boy from the guys at Golby's. So when Kian's back from chasing parts, I'll get him to install this bad boy, get it up, get the car charging, and then I've got a new present to show you.
So it's a little bit tight in here with our radiator trying to get to the tension to pop the belt off. So I've had to step down on the tool slightly. I'd usually use a breaker bar for this, but I really don't want to pull the radiator out, so it's all right. The belt is off. Alternator plug that's already been adapted to work on the Haltech loom. And now the real question is, does this alternator slide out or off the stud in the Volvo, or do we have to get more creative? Now, oh great, it is hitting the radiator. I'm hoping that if I just take these clamps off, the radiator will slide this way a little bit, and that'll give me just enough room to get the alternator off, because I don't want to pull this out, it's got fresh coolant in it. These would be nice. There we go. Now if I drop that out the bottom, voila. One dead alternator. Here is the new one from Golby's. So we'll throw this in very carefully to not put a hole in our nice radiator, and hopefully we'll have a fully charging Volvo. Oh, that was much easier than I thought it was going to be. So we've got the Haltech loom here, and then this is the original 1JZ loom plug that Scotty repinned, I think from memory. And that still doesn't work with the alternator we've just put on. So Golby's give you an adapter, and then this will go on the alternator. So how many adapters does it take to get an alternator working? We'll throw the belt on, do the radiator back up, and then it'll be sweet until we have to put the thermostat in.
So I mentioned before we had a bit of a surprise coming, and here it is. One of Haltech's brand new IC-7 digital dashes. A brand newie, nice and fresh, but there she is. Feel the freshness. That's it, I did it. Hopefully we'll be able to plug it in and it will work straight away, and then we'll have to make sure we attach it in the correct position. But yeah, let's trial that right now. Let's plug it in and see if this thing fires straight up. All right, so that will plug in right there. Click. Oh, we'll reach up under the dash here, find our wideband controller. So she's plugged in there. Plug him in. All right, Ken, you want to hit the key there? Oh, hello. Crank her up. Look at that, straight away. Obviously we still need to do some setup stuff, but I love the fact we plug it in and it works straight away. How good is that? Now we should look into how we're going to mount this thing. All right, we'll just trim out the center. That fits in there. So now we'll just have to locate our holes and then paint it black. It looks pretty good. So we've just screwed it to the back of the Haltech dash, and now the test. And there she is. Job done. All right, let's sort out some power steering lines. So what I've done is I've cut the mounts off this power steering reservoir that came with the engine, and our power steering pump's there. So I've made this bracket and found a space here on the suspension tower. So what I'm going to do is weld that to there so we can get our reservoir in the right spot, and then we'll weld the bracket to the actual reservoir. I think that will do us. We'll unbolt that from the guard, take it over on the bench, weld it properly, and then we'll plumb some lines. Happy days. So here we are, the moment of truth. We're going to put our Trolvo on the dyno. It's got our Haltech dash in there, Haltech ECU. We're going to get Zane from Maxx Performance to throw a tune in this thing. We're going to go on 98 first, so just normal fuel, and then E85 next, see what power it makes. Now we're kind of limited to what boost we can run. At 15 pounds, they reckon the turbos start to come apart on these standard twin turbo setups. So we'll see how we go, see what sort of power it makes. Let's do it. Let's make some power. So we just did a pass and it made what, 60 kilowatts, something like that, making zero boost, as no boost at all. So we think we've either got a dead sort of recirculation / blow-off valve, or we have a pair of dead turbos. Okay, so what we've got here is our blow-off valve / recirculation valve. So it takes boost from the boost part of the intake. So that's your intake part, and there's your boost part. So it takes your boost, feeds it back into the intake, but it could be that this valve is seized open, who knows. There's been a lot of stuff on this engine that have been, you know, dead, kaput. So we're going to block off this port down here in the manifold. All being well, it should make boost. No boost! Well, that's not the result we wanted. No boost, zero boost, nada, nothing, zilch, zero. It is, yeah, it's not the end of the world though. We can ditch the twins, go to a nice big single. And you'll see all that on a future episode of Carnage.
It's just a question.
He doesn't give up.
I never fucking give up.